Welcome, everybody, to the Brian Piergrossi Podcast. That's me. I am delighted to have Christie Lenee with me as my guest today. Hi, Christie.
Hello, everybody. How's it going? Thanks for
Back from the
tuning
mountains, back from the cabin, in the mountains.
in. Yes.
Christie's in, she's a neighbor now. We both live in Asheville, North Carolina now, which has been great.
What do
Been
you
seeing you
know?
a few times.
Yeah.
And I first became aware of you, speaking of Asheville, in our New Year's Eve event, New Year's Eve, January 1st, 2020 in Asheville. And you were a presenter. And John and Kathy Stringer introduced me to you. And it was just a phenomenal performance that you laid out for us there. That was a great night. And it was just an awesome energy. And it's been a joy to get to know you since then, and look forward to getting to know you more today. I was going to read a little bit of your bio, which I was telling you, I don't know if I've done that much ever at all, but I just felt inspired to read a little bit about you to our audience. Singer,
Awesome.
songwriter, and renowned fingerstyle guitarist Christie Lenee is more than a musician. She's an experience. Symphonic compositions flow from her fingertips effortlessly, with sound ranging from transcendental folk pop to virtuosic instruments. Her recent title of Acoustic Guitarist of the Year 2019, awarded by the Music Radar magazine at the UK, has launched Christie's career towards international stardom. Christie is often described as Michael Hedges meets Joni Mitchell and Dave Matthews, integrating melodic pop lyricism with catchy hooks and percussive harmonic textures. As an official showcase artist at Folk Alliance International, consistently logging a number of major festivals, events, opera houses, and theaters nationwide and worldwide, Christie Lenee performs with radiant joy. That's something I want to talk about, because that is very true. That awes crowds and inspires fellow musicians. She recently told Digital Journal that years ago, I set my intention to be an inspirational songwriter. And over time, I've come to realize that inspiration comes in many forms. Talking about the dark and the light, the beauty and the moments of pain are all forms of inspiration. I just love all of that. I had to read it.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, it's all true. I mean, especially the part at the end you were talking about creativity. Creativity can come in many forms, and I'm always just trying to be an open vessel to catch it when it wants to
Mm-hmm.
come through.
Mm-hmm. And
So,
you get the Brian Piergrossi Award for, in my opinion, you're one of the top guitarists that I would say not only in the world but ever.
oh,
I'm a huge fan of your
oh, that's
music, and
awesome.
yeah, you're incredible. So let's talk about what makes a great guitar player. It's very interesting. I was thinking about this, and it's like there's the skill of, like, knowing where the notes are and knowing where the chords are, and
Right.
being very proficient
Mm.
as a guitar player in that way, being very technically sound. So you're amazing in that way. But then there's this other thing that's kind of a little bit more like mysterious. It's like a presence. Like, you're really, like, if someone's really present with the instrument and they're really here and they're really, so it's kind of like this. I always find this interesting balance of, like, knowing where you want to go but being in the moment at the same time, right? It's like a balance of both of those things, it seems like.
Well, they said that I was told many years ago that Bach used to read about 6 pages ahead of where he was actually playing. And it's so interesting because I'm a very in the moment kind of person. Um, and I do my best to plan ahead, but some things can't be planned for. I think with creatively as a musician, the greatest goal for me has always been to be able to play what I hear, and so it's not like it's necessarily just to play what I hear in my head, but it's also if I hear a song on the radio or if I'm playing with a band, to be able to hear a part and play it right back. So I've spent a lot of time on those oral skills to be able to respond to sound in the moment when I hear something and to be able to play it back. It's just through a lot of ear training, learning things by ear and stuff. But where that translates, or it's the most incredible thing, is if I have a song in my head that the most important thing is to be able to get from point A to point B to compose the piece of music so that nothing physical is going to get in my way from being able to actually play it or execute the idea. So I've spent a lot of time on, technique and trying to get my hands. It's like training for the Olympics. You know what I mean? Like if
Mm,
you can't choose to run a marathon, just all of a sudden, if you haven't been training, you're going to exhaust yourself or probably fall. It's the same kind of thing, I think, if you're going to try to play a really advanced guitar piece. There's like getting from point A up to point B or whatever X, depending on the level of advancement in the piece. There's other things that have to be learned to get there, and so I've spent years, learning classical guitar pieces, studying jazz guitar, studying rock music, all far before I ever wrote any of my own music. And so, really developing those oral skills, the physical skills, and to be able to technically play, almost anything that would come my way. And so now, when I have an idea, it's so much easier, to execute the idea because I've played so much advanced music already. So I think that's probably the biggest thing is, some people are like, oh, I want to compose this crazy advanced music, and it's hard if you haven't actually played music that's already been written that is really advanced. Same as a writer would probably read a lot of books in their life, and then at
right,
some point they would write a book. But it's like,
right.
try to write a book and you've never read a book, then it's probably going to be really challenging because there's no framework of like how to get there, how to build a storyline, and it's all the same thing in the composition of a piece of
Uh-huh.
music. Yeah.
But there's this balance between, like, because I do writing. I've written 2 books. So, and I did read a lot of books, and I studied different authors and things and poets and mystical poets and stuff.
Oh,
But
yeah.
then there's also like this point where it's like if you're just copying other people, then you're not the unique artist that you are. So it's like something comes through that's uniquely you. Like I mean, definitely you're clearly like you've really studied and you really practiced, and but
Mm.
then somehow you're uniquely you too. Like there's a sound that's you, that's not anybody else. So how do you go from like studying these great artists to me and this is my sound?
I think for me it's been in timelines of, it was like eighth grade when I got a guitar. It was all, learning rock songs by ear, and then it's like ninth grade, still that, and then it's like classical guitar for 3 years, jazz guitar, and then kind of went into that. I mean, I couldn't imagine just picking up a guitar, in the eighth grade and writing a song. I mean, maybe I made up some riffs, but I don't. I see what you're saying though too, because it's like it makes me. I always think about. I had a teacher in college. It was a jazz improvisation class, and he said, you could just sit in your room all day long and make up guitar riffs. And one day you might go, and you'd be like, oh my God, I just created the most incredible melody I've ever heard. And it's like, you wouldn't know that that's already been created if you haven't taken the time to actually like to learn the vocabulary of music and music history and understand what's already been done. And it's like taking the framework of what's already been done and kind of shifting it into your own paradigm. I think is like part of the art of language. It's like we learn our vocabulary, we learn how to speak, we understand how things have been spoken before. But for us in our own voice, it's kind of the way we speak it, it's how we choose to use the words. And so I think that's all just part of the journey. And I would love to read your books, and hear
I'll
what,
make sure you get some copies.
yeah, and hear how your voice has come through because that's what it is. It's like people can say a lot of the same things of what they're talking about in a song, in a book, but it's like how they're saying it and the way that it's being translated is what makes it your own, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's only 7 notes in the musical major scale, and it's like,
Mm.
or there's only 12 notes altogether technically, and then octaves, but it's like, if we only were to think about notes, then it's very limited. But music is also expression, it's dynamics, how loud and soft you get. It's, in literature, punctuation, the exclamation points, the question points, the bold letters, the underlines, the italics.
Mm-hmm.
Music, it's tone, it's where you're playing it on the guitar, by the bridge, by the neck. If I'm using the flesh of my finger as opposed to my nail, or if I'm using a pick or fingers, the same exact sound, or a different guitar, the same exact piece of music could sound completely different depending on who's playing it, depending on
Mm-hmm.
dynamics, all of these things that can't, well, they can be written on a piece of paper, and people do their best when they're composing like sheet music to actually write in the dynamics, or pianissimo, I want this to be really soft, or but there's no difference between an amateur trying to play or somebody who doesn't have the experience of a lot of music, for them to play the piece, and then you give it to like John Williams to play it, and there's things that he's going to do that weren't written in the sheet music that make it brilliant. And that's the art of like composition as one piece, and then there's like the performance of it, which is like a whole other thing, like you're going to give a speech, you've written it, somebody else is going to read it, and it's going to come through one way, but if you read it, it's going to come through a certain way. And that's just the power to me of energy, and how somebody is bringing the song.
Yeah, well, that was kind of what I was getting at in my question. So when you're performing, so you have a song, you wrote the song, and you're going to perform a song to a live audience. So do you have a sense of like, here's how I'm going to do the song, and then you do the song exactly how you thought you're going to do it beforehand, and then that's like a good performance? Or do you think like, here's how I'm going to do the song, and then you get in front of the audience, and do you see what I'm going? Like it's like, because as a speaker, like because even that January 1st thing, like I gave a speech at that, and it's like, okay, here's how it's going to go, but then I'll come up and be like, oh, actually, they need to hear this right now, and they need to hear this with more emphasis, and this with less. So that's how I feel you. It feels so alive when you're sharing music live. It feels like you're just like you're going off the crowd, and you're kind of feeling what's there. And so, like, what is that balance between like, I'm going to go from point A to point B exactly as I think I'm going to, and there's some kind of nuance, there's some kind of difference, that's playing off the energy that's present in the moment with the crowd, right? There's something there that's alive too.
Yeah, I think it's like the art of spontaneity, but we're improvising all the time. It's like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
improvise when I choose to cross the street before the light turns green, or like if what I'm gonna wear one day, or how I'm choosing to be in the world, or but
What are you
so
going to say
it is.
next?
Exactly, but it's like that. Honestly, I wish that I could plan much more. I really try, in terms of like a set list. Um, for me, planning of like an exact show, or exactly how something is going to go, only goes the way that I plan it if there's other people involved. Like, it's like if I have a band, there's going to be an exact set list, and all the transitions will be written in the set list, with the drummer is going to start this song while I switch to my 12 string, or the bass player is going to do this, piano was going to do this during, the whole thing will be completely planned. And I could try to attempt that in a solo show, but it never is that way, because it's like I could write a set list, but the moment I get out there, as I start going, I feel the energy of the people, and I start to respond. And even if there is a plan, like for the band, I'm still, always telling people that, okay, it's this amount of measures for the guitar solo or for the intro, but just watch me, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a move, and that's when we're actually going to go into the next section, because there's always got to be carved in room for some spontaneity. So it's like there's spontaneity within structure as well. So I know I want to try to cover these points and at least play these songs, but inside of them, things might kind of change a little bit. Same as a speech, right? It's
Well,
like,
the same. See, the thing that's exciting about this podcast, and why I like talking to musicians and artists, is because it's the same lessons for life, right? So you just said something that struck me. You said spontaneity within structure, and it's like that's our life. Like that's when you're really living like full on. It's like, yeah, you have a structure, you have a sense of like the way you want your life to go. I want my day to go like this. I want, blah blah blah. I want to do these 5 things, and I want to do them well. But then inevitably, for me at least, maybe someone else is different, but for me, like things never go exactly as I planned. So that's where the spontaneity comes in. It's like you got to have spontaneity within the structure. And like I feel like when I'm present for like an amazing musical performance, that's how it feels. It's like, they're not coming in with like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing tonight at all. There's some sense of direction, but then there's this aliveness to like, oh, like I think I've even heard you say this. Like sometimes you'll be like, oh, I thought I was going to play this song, but I'm actually feeling this song wants to come through, right? So it's like really being present, and like I think that's what makes a great performance.
Absolutely. And I'm learning, through a lot of discoveries in this moment of how to try to manage that in my life, because that spontaneity isn't always, it's not always like the best way to live for me, in terms of like completing projects and all these things, because I get so excited. It's like, a little bit of ADHD going on, which I'm only learning about because of, just through some research recently. I'm like, oh, I think I might have a little bit of that. How can I manage this? But for me, it's just always been that way. It's like, oh, I write this song, and it's like, this is like the most important thing in the world right now. And then it's like, I demo it, and then a few days later, it's like, oh, now this thing's coming through, and this is like the most important thing. And I think that creative people are that way quite a lot, and I think we can use it to our advantage. And now, even just like I'm 35 years old now, and I'm finally starting to realize how that is such a gift, to be able to be so present when something's coming through, and also to learn how to balance that with like a little bit more structure, and a little bit in terms of like project management and things that actually will take a career, further. Because if I just stay in spontaneity mode all the time, I would never release a song, and I'd probably never, put out another album or anything like that. So, but yeah, you're absolutely right. There's got to be some spontaneity within the structure, though. Otherwise, it's just too rigid, and it's not a lot of fun that way. And music is supposed to be a performance, so it's like half of it is the music, and half of it is what people are actually seeing. And I don't think people really even realize when they're watching a concert how much of it is visual. I did actually a workshop at the DIY music conference with a guy named, now I'm forgetting his name, but he runs a production company, and it's live music production. He's like produced Taylor Swift shows, like really big concerts that have huge productions, and they're out doing things about the lighting transitions and all of the changes and stuff. And they did some examples for a huge group of thousands of people. They got a band in front, and they were directing the band and telling them things they could do to make their show and live performance better. And something that he said, it was so interesting. He's like, I don't care how much somebody really knows music, like there's going to be a point in the show where they're watching, and they all of a sudden might get distracted and think, oh, I really like that pair of shoes she's wearing, or, oh wow, look at the way she kind of like moves when she's playing a little bit. And it might not be that there was something that you did that was wrong, but if you just stand there and don't do anything different throughout the entire thing, people's attention can go. So I'm always like really aware of that, I think, when I'm performing, of like, how can I do something that's gonna just like shift the visual presentation just a little bit, whether it's going up to the side of the stage in the corner, or having my head back versus like getting down on my knees, or like having the guitar up like this, or swirling it around my body. No, I'm just kidding. Maybe doing a backflip. Just kidding. But just little things that can kind of make it visually stimulating, are fun for me to do, just to kind of, I don't know, for me it just makes it more interesting.
So is that spontaneous? Is that like feeling off the crowd with where the crowd's at, or is that like pre-choreographed, or both?
A lot of it is premeditated, but not it doesn't always happen the way that it's planned, you know. And most of the time it's a premeditated idea, but when it happens, um, it might shift a little bit. But, it's hard to say because I haven't done a lot of shows this year
I
considering
know.
COVID and everything.
Yeah.
Um, but even just at home and, making music at home, it's like, there's definitely far more spontaneity these days in trying to learn how to structure when my life has been run on like travel and adrenaline for the last 11 years, and now I'm home and just like in one place, and it's like, oh, okay, self-regulation and management of the mind and an emotional body and spiritual body, and how that integrates with my creative atmosphere. I think that's all, just like a journey in itself of learning ourselves, and I think it all plays into how we produce art, you know.
Mm-hmm. Has it been challenging you for being used to being on the road and doing, being in front of big live audiences and crowds and traveling, and now not having that, this year? Has that been challenging, or how have you kind of have you discovered maybe something like valuable in it, or like what's that been like for you?
Yeah, it has been challenging because I at some point over the last few years thought that I'd become really introverted because I've been touring so much that I needed a significant amount more time alone and more time to recharge. Also, I was living in a cabin for 2 years in the middle of nowhere, kind of, I mean, only an hour from Asheville, but very out there in Lake
That
Lure.
place that was by, was it the one that's by Lake Lore?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that made me feel like I'd become really introverted, but I realized this year that I'm not. Actually, I really thrive on people and the energy of other people, and so it's really hard doing, a live stream when there's nobody there. If you're just looking
Yeah.
at the camera and trying
Yeah.
to, it's for me almost feels like triple the amount of energy
Mm.
because I'm trying to create the feedback as well as,
Yeah, you have to
you know,
generate it. Yeah.
exactly. So it takes a lot more energy, and I think it's a different kind of practice. So there's been a few pre-recorded things where I just like ask a friend to come over and be like, "Hey, can you just be there on the other side of the camera?" And that's been helpful for me. But yeah, I mean, I miss that feeling of just like a crowd roaring,
Yeah.
the feeling of just like the energy of people, and you know, I think there's a lot of unknown of when that's going to happen again, but I think it's a time to go inward, and that's what I've been discovering of, what can I learn more about myself, and how can I do this from home, in a way that where I feel balanced and joyful through it. And a
Hmm.
lot of that sometimes is not always about, you know, trying to produce, which is what I was trying to do at the beginning. And then I found myself really exhausted because I'm like, wait a minute, why am I trying to run my life with the same speed as it was before COVID? Whereas, like, what would it be like if I just were to slow down for a second? And I'm now having a chance to really look at some things within myself that I just didn't have time to take a look at before then. So I think it's been a huge blessing, and I think I've written some of the best songs of my career this year. Um, I haven't recorded them yet because I'm kind of, well, other than my little demos here in my home studio, but I'm excited, starting at the end of January to get like really into the record and make the recordings of these songs. So it's been a process, and yeah, I
Yeah.
missed it, but it is what it is, and
Yep. Yeah, I feel the same.
yeah.
Yeah, but when you are performing, you have like this write up that I read, you have this like incredible joy that just like emanates from you. And what's happening for you when you're like playing music? It almost feels like you go into like another dimension or another like level of consciousness or something? Like, what are you feeling internally when you're like you're playing your music, which obviously you love what you're playing.
Oh, that's just a phenomenon. I think that Elizabeth Gilbert talks about it in her book Big Magic. If you've ever read that, it's a whole book on creativity. Um, she describes it as like, if you've ever had those moments, if you watch a dancer do this unbelievable performance and they're like transcending this energy and it's almost otherworldly, and then they feel like they're on this high after that happened, like, wow, I can't believe that just came through. And then the next day, of course, their knees still hurt and not, they
Yeah.
realize I'm still human. It's
Yeah.
kind of like that, because it's like I think I've just spent so many years working on music and also developing my spiritual practice and meditation and really trying to open up, especially recently, really trying to open up my crown chakra so that I can have just an energetic point to like let things come in. And so I spend a lot of time on self-care actually, and meditation and yoga to try to really get myself into a place where I can be an open vessel and be centered so that when that time comes for to do a performance or record, that I can have all of those physical skills that have been developed over the years, but also the spiritual kind of opening for it to come through. And it's something that I can't explain. I don't know. It is kind of like entering another dimension because um, my soul wants to open up into this divine music that wants to come through me. And that's always actually this visualization that I do before going on stage. I always open up my arms really wide and I just like imagine that I imagine angel wings. I mean, this might sound a little woo woo for some people, but I'll just let you know that this is what I've done before I've gone on stage almost every time for the last many years. And I just open my arms and I just like feel the energy of the universe around me, and I imagine that if it was like these open angel wings, that I were to open them up to all the people who were in the room, and allow myself to be a vessel of music so that it can come through, and that people will not just hear it but they can feel it, because it is they're only going to feel it if I'm feeling it, and I'm only going to feel it if I'm open enough to feel it. I know how to play the notes, but it's only just like a tiny bit of what it is to hear and feel music is the notes. So everything else is energy, and for me anyway. And so I spend a lot of time trying to just regulate my energy and myself so that when I am sharing a piece of music, that it can come through with the energy that I intend. And if you're experiencing that when you're listening to it, then it's working. So that's great.
Yeah. That's it. That's it. Right. I mean, at the heart, music at its, I really feel like music at its best is a spiritual experience, right? It's like you're articulating it really well. Like, I think you're articulating what the artist feels, but also what the listener feels, and it's like this, like, I mean, one level, it's like a sacred level of presence. Cause I feel like a lot of it's presence. Like, it's not like you're there and you're like, oh, what am I doing next week? Or, it's like, you're like really there, so your
Yes.
mind is just like quiet, and your heart is open. And then like, you're just a channel for this music to come through. It reminds me of a lyric in a song that I heard. The singer is the song, something like that, right? Like the singer becomes the song, like this, almost like the
Yeah.
singer like disappears and they become the song that's being played.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's still a human experience too often, as well as a spiritual experience, because I would be lying to say that there haven't been times where I've been on stage and then I like start playing and then quickly realize that I never ate dinner, and then I start to feel hungry and I have to like in the moment come back to the song, you know what I mean? And so that's happened for me just as much as where you know I have to come back to the ultimate experience, which is to be so deeply present with the music that it actually takes over me. And that's the thing that it's like yoga in a way, where it's like sometimes you can reach this point where you're so deeply connected that it's just profound. And music is that way too, where it's like there's a point where the music is playing me, is that's how it feels. And I'm just there and letting it come through me. I've already written the songs. I've already taken the time to practice them like crazy. But the strangest thing happens is like there's been times where I haven't had a chance to warm up, or hadn't practiced for a few days because I'd been on planes or traveling or not sleeping well, hotels, whatever. And if I were to use my mind to go on stage, then it would be a different experience, because I'd be like, oh my God, I haven't, which is like the thing that happens before the show. It's like, oh my God, I haven't had a chance to practice. I haven't had a chance to warm up. I haven't had a chance to have food, blah, blah, blah. All this stuff, mind, mind, mind. That's a mental experience that's happening. And I have to find a way to come back to my center and realize that ultimately music is just energy. And if I am going to open up my soul to let it come through me, then none of that stuff is really going to matter, at least for very long. Eventually, if I don't eat, I'm going to pass out. But you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just like, it's not going to, as long as I can come back to that space, the music will play me. And that's the practice. And, so I do a lot of practice of just like technique, blah, 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 songs, all of these things. But the biggest practice of all is how can I open up my vessel so that the song plays me? And that is the most, it's the most transformational, profound experience that I've had as a human, to be able to feel music coming through me in that way. It almost feels like when you're out in the sun and you feel the sun rays coming down all of your skin, like every pore of your skin is just really warm. It's kind of like that, but it's just like this warmth of music, and it's just like, exploding out of my body. That's what it feels like.
It's a great metaphor.
Yes.
And it's like that what you're describing, like that's like the ideal, like the ultimate spiritual, like attainment, or whatever we want to call it, would be to, can we translate that to our life? Can we like live our life from that place? Like that feels like that's my intention to like support people with the work that I do. And that's why I get more inspiration from like artists and musicians than I do, to be honest, from like whatever they're called, like ministers or reverends or whatever, because I feel like artists they have these moments, or maybe they have like long stretches of period where they're in that space. It is the ego transcendence. It's like, in order to have like an incredible song come through you, you have to let go of your ego and like become the song. And like I was actually listening, we were talking about, last time I saw you, we were talking about Eddie Van Halen. I actually saw this old footage of Eddie Van Halen talking. Well, he was playing guitar a little bit too, but he was talking, and this woman's like talking to him, and like I don't think of Eddie Van Halen as like a religious person at all. I don't think he probably thinks of himself as a religious person at all. But this woman's talking to him, and she says something like, you're such a great guitarist, or you're a great guitarist, or you're a great, and he looks at her and he goes, it's not me. It doesn't come from me. It just comes through me. And he says something about the man upstairs, or some metaphor to like, some higher power, coming through him. And that was like really revealing, because it's like, I think anybody who is producing incredible music, they all have that same feeling of like, or like for me, when I would writing or poetry or any kind of creative field, visual artists, when you really do something magical, you're like, I didn't even do, like, I wasn't even doing that. That just like came through me, and like, that's the place that we all want to be in, but I think the kind of the paradox of it is you can't you can't use your ego to try to force it or use effort. It's like exactly what you did, that metaphor of like opening up your arms. It's like just being open and available for it, and like let it come through you.
Exactly. And no, I resonate with that too. And you can call it whatever you want, but
Right.
I think
The label's not important.
exactly. And I think all of us have experienced it in a different way, whether we're aware of it or not. It's those moments, it's like the moments where they've talked about people who can all of a sudden just like pick up a car because their daughter's underneath it. There's power in, when we just like get out of the mind, and it's just that's like the fight or flight and all of that kind of adrenaline. There's some power in what we are capable of, and strength that we don't even realize that we have. And I've been in some crazy situations like that as a musician where I'm like up against, for example, I've gotten to play with some of my favorite musicians in the world, and earlier this year put out a song with Tommy Emmanuel and I playing together in Poland. First of all, he's like one of my greatest heroes. We've gotten to play together a few times, and it's every single time I've been on stage with him, or Tim Reynolds from Dave Matthews Band, same kind of thing. This unbelievable guitarist who I look up to so much. And it doesn't matter. Of course I'm going to practice a lot leading up to that moment. But those moments where I've played with people like that, something happens because now there's double the amount of energy on stage. And so energetically, if we're both like these open vessels, I just have to say that I have played some of the craziest things that I've ever played in my entire life, and I have no idea where it came from. I saw the video like last week of Tommy and I playing in Poland, and I was playing this just wild guitar solo so fast, and I'm like, where did that come from? And I'm like, well, because I'm like, that's the power of energy. I'm now in my own energy and open vessel, but I'm feeding off of his energy, and suddenly something came through me that even if I could have tried to practice that guitar lick like 1,000 times, but I'd never played that. Whatever it was, it just went, and I was like, what was that? But in the moment, you can see me surprised because I'm like, oh my God, what was that?
And that's the great moment. That's why people show up at a concert. They want that moment, That's awesome.
Exactly, the surprise. And that's what I recorded a couple songs with Phil Keaggy this year too, and they're like, you can hear us laughing in the track because it was all improvised. And there's one point in one of the Phil Keaggy songs where I just bust out laughing in the middle. It's because he played the craziest thing, and somehow, and like we changed meters together, improvised, and then somehow came right back. None of it was planned. We'd never rehearsed. We never even played together. And this thing just happened, and I am laughing. It's in the track on Spotify because I'm just like, what just happened, and there's no way we could have planned that or rehearsed that. And at the end, he goes, well, that was nice. And I'm like, wow, that was pretty nice. And it's just funny, that whole thing was improvised. And every time I tell someone that, had you guys improvised that? And it's like, yeah, that's just the power of like getting people in a room who love music, who have that availability to be open. And same, like if you're going to have a conversation with, I don't know, Michael Beckwith or just some spiritual teacher.
Christie Lenee.
Oh yeah, exactly. Like you might think of something that you would have never thought of because there's all of a sudden this transcendence of energy, and now like I'm inspired from talking to you. I'm inspired from talking to you. Yeah. So that's what it is, and that's the thing that I think a lot of people are missing during COVID is that that collaborative. Collective experience of people coming together and intellectually stimulating each other. So somehow we're finding ways to do it ourselves and through video calls, but it's better than nothing, right?
Yeah, but that's really interesting what you said about how it's almost like you're in, like we call it like the zone or something, or you're in this field, and then someone else comes along, whether it's on stage or wherever it is, and like they're in the field, they're in the zone, they're in the present, and then it like amplifies it, and it's like exponentially more. And then maybe there's a third person or fourth person, and maybe you get a whole band that's all in this. That's like that's the moment, right? If you get a whole band that's in that moment together, and then it's just like we can go anywhere, we can do anything. It's in music, but again, it's also like it could be in a conversation. It could just be with you're with some friends, and like you just have this feeling of like we're just here, and like anything is possible, and there's all this love, and it's like that's what it's all about. That's where we want to be. We want to, and like it's like can we be there, like, you know, moment by moment, like day in and day out. But I actually saw, we were driving. We're actually, I don't know if I told you, but we're in Hilton Head. Did I tell you that? We're in Hilton Head, South Carolina right now. Yeah.
Cool.
By the beach.
Nice.
So,
Is it warm there?
it's warmer than Asheville, but it's not like, you know, it's not like shorts and t-shirt or anything.
Yeah.
I think it was I think it might have hit 70 today. Like I think it's like up like 60s.
Nice.
But there's a lot of wind too. So because we're at the beach, there's a lot of wind.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're grateful to be here and appreciative. And but on the way down, I had heard that Bruce Springsteen was on Saturday Night Live.
Oh.
So this past Saturday, so I asked Annie to play it through the speaker, and he had the East Street Band, which he's been with since like the 70s.
Oh, no way.
You know. Yeah, so you see like all the same, I don't know all their names, but you see the drummer, I recognize. There's the woman with the red hair, she's there. The guy with always has the bandana, he's next to him. And they got to be like close to 70 years old, you know? But it's like you see this band that's been playing together, and they were so tight, like they're live, and it's just like, wow, the energy coming, like these people that are like 70 and the energy coming through them, and they're so tight, like how they're playing off each other. So it's like, that there must be like some value in that too, of like, obviously if people have like, you know, if there's tensions or people are not getting along over a period of time, that's different. But if people are in harmony, and they're in harmony over a consistent period of time, they could probably just go deeper and deeper together, you know. It's pretty amazing to experience.
Yeah, I know. I mean, and that's why there's nothing like playing with a band. It's awesome, you know. And I have actually recently was told that still when you're playing solo, you can create that collective energy by calling in other types of energies of you know, to kind of be with you, so you don't feel like you're alone up there. And that was a very interesting kind of perspective. I'd never thought of it that way. I think when I'm playing solo, I'm feeding a lot off of the energy of the people in the room, and the audience becomes my band, you know.
Yep.
But that is so, there's nothing like watching a band that's been playing together for a long time, or even just more than one person playing together, because there's a synergy and there's a vibration between those energy frequencies that emits some kind of some radiance, you know. That's harmony, or that phenomenon of energy that we're talking about, you know. And but it's inspiring. And you know, I can't actually, this weekend I'm doing well, I think when this comes out, this will be past, but I'm playing with the band Free Planet Radio in Asheville. I'm going and doing 4 of my songs with them, and then doing 2 of their songs for a live stream. And so I'm excited. I haven't played with other musicians in a long time, so it should be a lot of fun.
Where are you doing that at?
It's a live stream. I don't know where we're filming from, but it's this Saturday. Yeah.
You just go where they tell you to go.
Yeah.
Show up and make it happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sweet.
I remember those days. Like, I mean, there's few and far of them between now. It's like, oh yeah, you have to be at this thing and, you know, dress nice. It's like the rest of the time I'm just, you know, in my pajamas doing what I can around here. Just kidding.
Let's talk about the songwriting aspect.
Okay.
So what's your process, and like how, like, what's a Christie Lenee day? I'm so fascinated to like what's a day, what's a like, well, I mean, yeah, what is a day like for you, and like where does your creative process come in? And like you were saying something interesting too about this kind of balance between spontaneity and being open to the creativity of the moment, but then you obviously have some discipline too to like have produced, you know, the songs you have and the records you have and the tours you have. Mm-hmm. So but let's just start with like, like the your day, and like where do you have a certain time of day that you write songs? Does it come through whenever it comes through, or how does that work?
Hmm. Songwriting, I don't. It's really hard to plan for songwriting. I can
You're in
plan.
the shower and then it just something comes through.
Yeah, I mean, I really try to, just in the morning after I get up and have my tea and coffee or smoothie or whatever, I'll usually meditate and do some yoga just to get my body and my blood flowing, or go for a walk. And sometimes it's even before that, I'll go straight to my guitar. I mean, if I have a dream about a song, I'll wake up in the middle of the night and just record a voice memo of the melody, and sometimes even get up and play, this like half asleep version with my voice like meh, on a voice memo, but it's enough for me to remember it the next day and work on it.
And do you feel like a lot of your stuff comes through your dreams?
There have been quite a lot of songs that have come through my dreams, but some of it comes from just, intentionally sitting with my guitar for, I'm like, okay, for the next X amount of time, I'm gonna sit and practice to, I don't know, 88 beats per minute in an open F tuning. And I'm gonna sit there for an hour probably, and I'll work on different techniques, finger exercises. And once my hands are really warmed up and I'm like in the flow of a pulse, and that's why I love practicing to a metronome and doing something specific. And a lot of songs have kind of come through that way, where I'm like, okay, I'm working on this right hand finger pattern in this tuning at this tempo, and I'm just kind of coming up with as many different ways that I can um, play through some of these patterns, different ideas. And then usually once I get through enough of it to where my hands are really warmed up and in sync with the pulse, my hands are in sync with each other, they're in sync with the pulse, I'll often start coming up with some melodic ideas and riffs, and I will and a riff will just come, and once the riff comes, usually the rest of the song is easier. But I don't. It's maybe 50% of the time I've written songs that way, where I'm intentionally practicing and warming up and getting my hands loose, and once I'm there, then some kind of riff will come through. And then once a riff comes through, I'll just keep playing that until I start to hear a melody, and then I'll turn off my metronome and then record a little, like a little version of it, me humming on top of it. And then once I come up with the first lyric, the rest of it is usually quite a lot easier. But I usually just sing the melody over the riff for a long time um, until I start to hear something lyrically. And then once I get the first line or a couple of lines, then I can kind of put down my recording and my guitar and sit with my notebook and write words while I have that melody in my head. And usually while I'm writing the words, the rest of the melody will come from how the words are being outlined, and then I'll go back to my guitar after I write the words and finish the music. So that's most of like the process for me. What I was saying, the 50% of the time is where it starts with practicing, and there's maybe like 20% of the time where it's like it comes through a dream, and then maybe like 30% of the time where I'm just like walking, or I don't know if these percentages are correct. I'm just walking, or I'm like, just randomly pick up my guitar in the middle of the day, like, and I have like 15 minutes before I have to do an interview or whatever or something. And it's like, usually when I have like a specific amount of time and I am not like trying to practice anything, there's also a strong possibility that something can come through because I know I don't have much time. So it's just like, oh, what am I going to do here? And I just make something up. But so there's a lot of different ways, but it often does come when I'm walking or if I'm on my yoga mat or just like in quiet. Something will come through. It might be something that somebody said, and then I'll be like, that's a good title for a song, and
Yeah.
I'll write it down in my archive of song titles that haven't been written yet, and later I'll go back and write it, or a year later I'll go back and write it, just depending on whenever I feel moved. But yeah, so it can come in a lot of different ways, but um, I really try to balance the songwriting element with the musician element of like wanting to become a better musician, wanting to become a better singer, and writer. So all ingrained in the practices, my vocal practice, my guitar practice, my lyrical practice, meaning like reading lyrics, writing poems, reading books. Um, it's it's all kind of part of it. And like I said, the spiritual practice of getting my body and mind open enough to be able to let things come through. I mean, so it's going on all day long, regardless of if I have a guitar in my hand. Whatever is happening is, like it could be I end up in this long conversation with somebody that I didn't plan to have. And there might be this thing in the back of my mind that's like, oh, I really should be practicing right now. But then something they say is like, that's a good title for a song. And then I might end up writing a song that never would have happened if I didn't have that spontaneity in between the structure of what I thought my day would be. And so I really try to use what I'm talking about with the spontaneity within structure in my life. Um, there's a lot of spontaneity,
Yeah.
and but there is discipline to as much as I am capable of. My discipline is usually a lot easier when I have tours happening, where it's
Hmm.
like I have this happening, so I can structure everything around that. So right now I'm sort of like I feel like I'm recreating how structure works in the music industry in my own career. But that process is really fun and exciting and a long learning process. And there's not a lot of consistency as much as there was when I was learning to play the guitar. Learning, it's like I'm gonna practice for 8 hours right now, or 4 hours, or this amount of time, or preparing for a competition. Blah blah blah. There's depending on what's going on. Long answer to your question is that it all depends on what's happening surrounding my life, depending on how many hours I'm going to spend on a certain thing. So,
Hmm. Do you
yeah,
get song fragments or pieces that come through in meditation sometimes?
it has. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because I find that that's something when people think about meditation, they think about like going into the stillness, going to the silence, which quieting the mind, which is definitely what it's about. But there's like this second part that doesn't get talked about enough, I don't feel like, which is where all these creative ideas start coming through and all these insights and kind of connecting the dots on things that you didn't realize how to connect. And then, artistic ideas can come through too. So I find that's like a really valuable part about like getting quiet and still inside. You just connect to this creative source inside yourself. And, then it's like, well, hope I can remember this.
Yeah.
When you come out, it's definitely different, but it's kind of similar to like that dream state you're talking about, where you're like you're going into this deeper dimension and accessing these deeper levels of yourself, and can
Yeah.
translate into something beautiful.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, I was trying to think of how to describe this, but the practice of the music itself, whether it's me sitting with a piano and working on like, like little lip trills or vocal warm ups or whatever, doing kind of vocal practice or doing what I was talking about with a metronome and sitting there and practicing for a while, like that's also sort of for me, like, it is warming up, it is practice, it's trying to become a better musician, trying to become a better singer, but it's also often the entry point to get me into my creative zone. I'm opening up my instruments, opening up my voice, opening up my guitar, so that there's a possibility that something could come through. Because if I haven't sang in a couple of days or something, and I just start belting it out, I might it's not necessarily good for my voice. So if I want to write a song and get in a writing mode, the first thing that I usually do intentionally is warm up my instruments, so that when it does come through, I'm ready for it and my hands aren't going to get stiff. I don't want to be like lifting a 250-pound dumbbell if I didn't do a little bit of warm ups with my muscles. So it's
Mm-hmm.
absolutely that way. As a composer and songwriter, for me, I have to warm up my instruments and keep those fine tuned, because if not, when the idea comes through, I'm not going to be able to hit those notes or sing it, or I'm not going to be able to find them physically because my hands are stiff. So that's the practice of the instruments themselves is probably the biggest thing that I'm grateful to have developed some discipline around that,
Mm-hmm.
and then to learn how to integrate that into my creativity and know that they work together, because without one you can't have the other for me. um,
And does your creativity come through late at night a lot? Is
yeah.
that you?
Oh yeah, I've been trying to get better at it because I'm learning a lot about the sleep patterns, and the circadian rhythms, and how, I mean, you know I know there's certain things that are supposed to happen between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. where I have probably the majority of my adult life have not slept during those hours. And so I'm really trying to get better at that. I would like to become a morning person. It hasn't happened quite yet, but I'm aware that it's much healthier for you. But it's there's so much self discipline that I have around certain things in my life, and the one thing that I feel like I only have so much control over is when the creative muse is going to strike and be ready.
Right.
And like, so it's like, if it comes to me when I'm getting ready to go to sleep, which is oftentimes is when it happens, it's like, okay, thank you. Well, I'm just gonna have to wait to go to sleep, and then change my entire sleep
Yeah.
pattern for several days just so that could have happened, but
Mm-hmm.
or not sleep as much. But I just want to snag it when it comes. It's
But
like,
pretty much every friend of mine that's a musical artist, they have that pattern where they're up late at night quite often. I think part of it is the lifestyle, because you're doing concerts so you just end up going to bed like 3 or 4 or whenever later, because you're doing shows and concerts and stuff. But there is something about that late night that, like, for me too, to a certain degree, it's like this creativity. I always feel like the earth is more quiet at night. Like the minds are, like, the more minds that go asleep, like the mind chatter is quieter, so you can kind of like access things. But you could also, but some people will say they also get that in the early morning. So there's the other way too. You go to bed super early and then get up really. I mean, yeah, go to bed early and then wake up really early, and it's also really quiet in that kind of window. You're up for everyone else's. But I think for most musicians, it's the other way, where it's like, late at night, and it's, people are asleep and they're up just feeling, music and creative ideas. That seems to
yeah.
be a thing. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I would absolutely love to wake up with the sun every single day, but if I'm honest, I've only ever seen the sunrise if I was having to catch a plane or I was still awake.
Right.
Yeah, I've just always been a late night owl. I mean, it is lifestyle. I mean, you're playing concert, going to the hotel, whatever. You have to do this thing. It's just, and it's even when there's not a concert, it's ingrained in my system, I think. But
Mm-hmm.
we'll see. I mean, like I said, I'm trying to shift it. I want to see what that's like. I love mornings. I love how beautiful it is to see the world wake up, when the birds start singing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I love it so much that if I'm still awake when that happens, it's nearly impossible for me to go to sleep. Um, so that's part of why I'm like, oh, it'd be fun to see what that's like to wake up early and create. But no,
Mm-hmm.
that's never been me. I've never
Mm-hmm.
done that.
Well,
It's
it's hard. Like
all
I
like
said, like I
waking up.
think like the way, you're doing your job late at night quite often, so it's hard to kind of like, doesn't really work that way. I mean, now you're not doing as many live things and stuff, but I find for the musical artists, it's like some of my friends, like they're not even going on stage till like 11 o'clock at night, for especially like you also like DJs and stuff. It's just a whole
Exactly.
different like way of living.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
where would you say your inspiration comes from? Like I feel like nature inspires you a lot,
Oh yeah.
and I feel like you know like relationships you've experienced, and kind of the human things you've experienced. But like what kind of inspires your songwriting and your music?
Definitely life experience. Um, my own life experience and the experience of others, observation
Mm,
of the world and experiencing what things that are happening. Um, and yeah, definitely nature is a big part of not always necessarily the inspiration of the music itself, but the ability to find a quiet peace of mind so that when I come back to wanting to dive into music, I can be more available for it.
mm-hmm.
Because if there's like, if I'm looking at the desktop screen of my mind and there's too many windows open at once, all the programs are going to run slow. So I think,
That's a
going
great
back,
metaphor.
yeah, yeah, no, I think so too. If it's like, but that's how it is for if you go out in nature and shut down the computer for a little bit and everything, then you have a chance for a reset. So that's part of it. Inspiration also can come from other music, but a lot of it comes for me through podcasts, books, movies,
Mm-hmm.
visual art.
Mm-hmm.
I'm inspired by all kinds of different types of art. I'm inspired by dance, um, and yeah, just but mostly more than anything that inspires my music is the guitar. I mean, it's like
Mm-hmm.
it's just the most incredible instrument. There's just and so many possibilities, but the guitar is my greatest tool for music, but it's music itself, it could be an ukulele, it could be a piano, it could be a drum.
Mm-hmm.
Instruments, I mean, it sounds like a simple answer, but instruments inspire music. It's like they're energetically like vibrational beings that want to
Mm-hmm.
resonate, and the more
Mm-hmm.
that they're played, like I said, how the practice and the creativity are integrated, the more that I sit with my instrument and make it vibrate and resonate, it's becoming this open, energetic field. And
Mm-hmm.
it's so much easier for inspiration to come through than um,
Cool.
if the voice has been vibrating, if the guitar has been vibrating, and then setting up a space for it to, clearing the clutter and setting up a space. I'm here in my little home studio now, and it's just nice in here. It's nice to create,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know. It comes from anywhere possible. I just have to be ready for it when it comes. Yeah.
So there's like a tradition in music of certain strands of music of like people using like just different kind of like psychedelics or different like mind altering substances or different you know um plant medicines or drugs or different things. I'm just wondering like what's your take on that, or anything like is that something that you like found
Hmm.
valuable on your journey, or people you've encountered? I'm sure you've seen it around, and like what is
Oh,
your what is your take on that?
interesting. Well, it depends on which time of my life we're talking about. Um, I mean, I had a time of my life where I engaged in all kinds of things.
uh,
and it, I had a blast, and it was great. And sure, I'm sure I created all kinds of wild things during those times, but um, yeah, I mean, I partied a lot in my younger years, and I think I hit a point. I actually got it out of my system pretty young, like a lot throughout high school, actually, early college, and now for me, I mean, I feel like the spiritual part of it is definitely nice. I mean, I think marijuana edibles are great. I used to smoke like years ago. I smoked tons of pot like back in the day, but I don't anymore because it hurts my voice and it does. But I think edibles, marijuana is a lovely plant medicine. I don't think it's good to overuse because for me personally, I know for other people it's great. It can make my brain really, really foggy if I were to have it a lot. But from time to time, a little bit of that is kind of nice, like just enough to kind of like just
Hmm.
take the edge off if it's very natural. Anything beyond that and a glass of wine is not really for me anymore. But I had all those days,
Hmm.
you know. And I don't ever judge anybody who
Right.
likes to enjoy that. I just happened to get it out of my system at a young age. But and I think that is one. It can be a portal for some people. I think because somebody takes something, some kind of hallucinogenic or something that's gonna help get them out of their mind and into their body, or just that it can be wonderful. And but I've heard other people having other experiences too. I think for me, I kind of turned towards yoga and meditation as a way to
Hmm.
find that bliss and that like light feeling.
Hmm.
And other things such as like acupuncture and massage,
Yep.
I feel like I can access the same thing as like, if I were to have like a little bit of a weed edible or something.
Hmm.
That same feeling almost I can get after a really good massage or like good acupuncture or
Yeah.
like going for a run in the woods. And I think that's kind of where the paradigm shifted for me. It was like the use of substance to access that, and which it did really well for me during that time of my life. um, and I'm sure I wrote tons of songs, tons of songs during all of that. But now I feel like I can access it in these other ways that are actually much healthier for me. And
Hmm.
I think like when I do access in that way, it's really cool because then I'm not like waking up hungover and I'm like I actually still feel energized and I can still like I can ride that high for so much
Yeah.
longer if I can create it naturally. So I don't think there's anything wrong with doing it the other way. Like I said, I had my time of that, but it's like I don't think that it's for me personally, anything that I find necessary anymore. But I do love a really good glass of wine. I think it's nice medicine. And you know, and
But
yeah.
that trajectory feels like that's a common. I had Maria Stark on here, who's a musical artist as well, and she pretty much gave a very similar answer to you. Like, when she was younger, she was dabbling in all sorts of different things, and felt it was an avenue for creativity. And then as she got older, and I think she's in her mid 30s now as well, um, there was this feeling of like, I can access that from other ways, naturally, holistically, that's sustainable. I don't have this kind of like up and down, and I'm not taxing my body in the same way. So that's I think that's really valuable that you're sharing that, because I think a lot of people don't realize that they can access this through holistic natural means. That's been my realization too. Like, same thing, like yoga, meditation, connection to nature, poetry, like these ways that there's no side effect from it. There's no, like, you're not crashing afterwards, but you're accessing these creative ecstatic states inside yourself. So I love that you shared that truth for
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, and it is. For me, it's much more sustainable. And I mean, and it's I'm grateful that I got that out of my system young, because so many musicians have, it's just like taken over their own lives, and they've died,
Yep.
because of just overuse of substance in that. And they're doing that often to try to manage, not only for the creativity, managing stress in the crazy lifestyle of what it is to be, like Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston, like trying to manage this amount of stress from being
Right.
who they are. And so, I think it's a blessing for people when we can discover that there are other ways to manage stress, and to discover our creativity, and to get that feeling of being high. Like, I felt so high and blissed just being out near waterfalls this weekend, and I found out that actually the reason why you feel so happy by a waterfall is because of the oh my gosh,
Ions.
yeah, the
Mm.
yes, the negatives or the positive ions. I didn't actually know that. All I knew is that I frequently seek out waterfalls, and I go and I sit by them, and it makes me very happy and
Mm-hmm.
alive. And it is that this like kind of feeling, um and now it makes a lot of sense to me. So it's almost like people have created these substances to like try to like,
Try to be a waterfall.
yeah, and but there's other ways to access it, and however people are finding it, I think is a beautiful thing. So,
Maybe you have a song coming about waterfalls.
oh,
There's something there.
I just saw that happen for you. It was like you just got this hit, this transmutation of an idea that I was supposed to hear. I saw it happen. So I think, um, yeah, I guess I'm gonna check that out. I was
Check.
struck by a waterfall, so
Explore that in your dreams tonight. See what comes through.
yeah. But yeah, I was at Dry Falls. You can stand underneath it and just watch
Hmm. From
water.
behind.
It's so amazing. So you've been
Amazing.
there? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
cool.
It's an amazing spot.
Oh.
So, what are you up to now? How do people plug into what you're doing? How do they get connected to you? What kind of projects you involved in?
Mm. Well, I am. I've been releasing a lot of singles this year. Some duets with Tommy Emmanuel, Phil Keaggy. I did one with Lawrence Juber. All those are all instrumental pieces. And I have a new one coming out on the 21st. Um, so if you're hearing this and that date has passed, you can go and listen to it. Um, and that's a song called Eve of the Solstice that I released for the summer solstice, and now I'm putting out the winter revision of it, which is practically the same song, but it doesn't have the poem up front. It's all instrumental. And I'll be going back into the studio in January. Um, but I've released a lot of music this year. You can find some stuff on Spotify at Christie Lenee, ChristieleNee. And on my website, ChristieLenee.com. I've put out a bunch of things this year, so it'd be fun to go and explore and check it out. Videos and songs, and there's always more coming out. So definitely, follow me on Facebook and Instagram and all of those things, YouTube, and you'll find no shortage of music there.
Sweet. And
Yeah.
I recorded a great video of you in our living room, which I haven't shared
Oh,
yet.
nice.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
cool.
maybe we'll get that out there soon too.
Awesome. That's exciting. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I'm so grateful to come on your podcast, and thank you so much. I'm really thrilled with some of the things we talked about, and I'm excited to listen back.
Likewise, yeah. I love that. Like I was telling you before we got on, I love that kind of like that. Like there's this musician, and there's like this incredible thing coming through, and it's like, where's that being accessed from? It's like this at the core of it. It's like the heart of, I call it the universal creative intelligence, but it's like this, like the source. It's like you're being open. I love that idea of just like being open, and I'm opening to the angels, beforehand, and I come out, and it's like, and then and it comes through. So I love the way you were able to articulate that and share that, and it really gives people a deeper sense of when they're experiencing your music of like, this kind of like you said, it doesn't matter if you use the word spiritual or God, or that's just words. But like whether you use the word or doesn't, it's coming from what those words are pointing to. So I love that. I love that you're able to share that and articulate that.
Oh yeah. Well, it's a feeling. It's that thing that you can't explain when you watch certain people play, you know? And that's my life's work, is to just go deeper into that thing that you can call
Yes.
anything you want. And
Yes.
and like, how do
That
I
which is
just like
beyond names.
soak up as many of those positive ions as I can
Right.
and transmute it into music. So yeah, that's it.
Beautiful. That's the perfect note to end on, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Thank
Oh,
you, Christie.
yeah. Thank you so much for having me, Brian. I appreciate you. Cheers.